After 3 long-awaited months, finally, the PGA Tour is back, and that puts me back on the airwaves. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I am Jason Rouslin, and this is part of our Awesemo podcast series and the first edition of the Fit and Form podcast. Over the last 3 months that we've been away, the team here at Awesemo.com and I have tried to get together and make sure we are giving you the best information possible in the right ways. So what we've done is we've kind of tailored our content to a weekly step process so that you can go through my weekly process basically with me and Ben's and everybody else that is here on the team. Of course, all culminating in Wednesdays live before lock show with Ben Raza and I, where we kind of cover everything that we went over in the week in an hour, or at least we try to. But in this podcast, this is the Fit and Form podcast, where I'm going to go into some course history, some recent form, and tie it all into strokes gained. So I'm going to find out why somebody might have good course history at a specific golf course by using data that we have available to us. Of course, we're also going to have my first cut podcast. The opening tee podcast. That is going to be on Sunday nights, still Monday morning. You'll find this podcast, the Fit and Form podcast, on Tuesday mornings, followed by my Wednesday morning podcast called Reading the Grain, part of the Against the Grain article. All of these podcasts are short form podcasts that are going to be under 15 to 20 minutes. I'll give myself a little benefit of the doubt and say 20 minutes. I know that opening tee podcast can run a little bit long. So in honor of that, we're doing a podcast giveaway here at Awesemo. And it is an Awesemo Plus weekly pass, so you get access to all of the sports that we're covering right now, PGA DFS, all of the League of Legends and esports stuff that Alex Awesemo Baker has just taken under control and absolutely loved. So what you got to do is you got to subscribe on our podcast channels. Then secondly, you got to rate and leave a 5-star review of our channel with your Awesemo Plus username or Twitter handle, and we'll be doing that giveaway on Friday. So still plenty of days. I'm recording this Wednesday morning, so still plenty of days to get in. All right, so what I'm going to start off this podcast each and every time is a quick review of the course profile that is mentioned in the first cut article that I write. Now, if you haven't had a chance to read that first cut article, it is, of course, a free article where I go over pretty much the basics for the week. But what I've added in this time is I've added in a course profile. I've found the information that the PGA Tour provides and wanted to give that a little bit. So here's where we're going to start off. It's Colonial Country Club. It's a par 70, 7,200 yards. And here's the facts and figures that I found from the course profile. First, the total driving distance for Colonial ranked 30th out of 49 courses last year. It shows that typically a longer driver just really isn't needed here. It also is one of the hardest fairways to hit on tour at just over 53% of the fairways being hit, which was third hardest on tour last year. So I guess hitting the fairway, first of all, is not very easy. And second of all, according to some information that I heard from the golfers themselves, looks like the rough is not very penal. So definitely driving accuracy or distance, really not a factor this week. So those that are so good off the tee, which we'll cover, may not be the best suited for this course. Okay, on the approach to the green, greens in regulation was the 8th hardest to hit on tour last year at just over 60%. However, because the greens are so small, proximity to the hole once you got on the green was one of the top 13 easiest. So it's all about your approach game here this week. But if you don't have the approach game, around the green and on the green has served to be quite a tool to perform well here at Colonial Country Club. We can see that by the winners, the recent winners, which we'll go over in our course history profile. Okay, so finishing up around the green. Missing the green at Colonial, it's really not the worst thing, but it is more penal versus other courses. In terms of scrambling percentage last year, it ranked 19th hardest, so basically right in the middle. Whereas the shorter scrambling, the 10 to 20 yards or from the fringe, both ranked inside the top 15 hardest. Lastly, when it came to putting, Overall putting was 33rd hardest, so one of the easiest courses to putt on, but from 4 to 8 feet, it can get very quick in that Dallas hot sun. Ranked 17th hardest on tour, so maybe a couple of missed putts from those distance this week always provides for a good sweat if you're watching the shot tracker. All right, let's move on to the next part of the podcast, which again, like I said, course profile, then again, I do some recent form, which obviously we don't have any recent form, but I'll cover what happened previous to this year. Then, of course, we'll go into the course history and course fit. But before we do, I want to say a thank you to SuperDraft, who is back and sponsoring the podcast and the shows for the month. I appreciate them very much. And SuperDraft, the future of daily fantasy sports, has arrived. Experience SuperDraft exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. That's right. You can put Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas. I don't know why you'd start with Jordan Spieth, but Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy. You can put them all in on the same team this week. That gives you countless lineup possibilities that let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and all the other sports so that you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today. We're going to have a promo code going to be coming out this week, so stay tuned for that on the rest of the content for today and tomorrow morning. We will certainly have one out there. So download the app in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Okay, let's go now into the recent form portion of this podcast, where, like I said, normally, in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, this tournament, I really feel like this tournament, excuse me, listen to me, I'm ready for this thing to start, as you guys can tell. This podcast will have a lot more focused on this recent form portion, but because we haven't played in 10 weeks, it's kind of a little hard to get into it. But what I'll do is I'll take recent form since the Tournament of Champions, so what golfers did this year, if you're just getting into it or if you forgot what happened, I'll give you a couple notes. All right, Bryson DeChambeau has competed 8 times this year. And in those 8 weeks, he finished in the top 10 6 times. Only Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm have had at least 5 other than Bryson. Well, they've actually only competed 5 and 6 times, respectively. So their top 10 rates are very good. 3 other golfers in this field hold a 75% top 25 rate with at least 4 starts this year. So that's coming in the top 25 at least 75% of the time. And that was done by Max Homa, Xander Schauffele, Jason Day. That doesn't include his withdrawal, though. Colin Morikawa and Matt Kuchar. And then, lastly, other than those golfers, only 8 have competed at least 5 times without missing a cut this year. Other than the ones we already mentioned above, which are couples and a Schauffele and the like, Mark Leishman, Dustin Johnson, Webb Simpson, Matthew Fitzpatrick, and Sergio Garcia all have earned a paycheck in every single one of their starts. So just interesting to know, maybe a little consistency there. Sergio Garcia, also a former champion back in 2001 of this event. So maybe somebody to keep an eye on out there. While, speaking of former champions at Colonial, Chris Kirk has had a tough go of it this season, missing 7 of his 8 cuts. Jim Herman also in that exact same boat. While Doug Gibb, Mackenzie Hughes, and Tyler Duncan have missed 6 cuts. Mackenzie Hughes, though, has a second-place finish there, thrown in the middle of that at the Honda Classic. And only Jim Furyk hasn't made a paycheck. That's of guys competing in this week. Since the turn of the new year, he's missed all 3 cuts. So, sorry to say, Jim Furyk, he will be looking for a paycheck this week. All right, now we are going to move on to our history and fit portion of the podcast, which I'm sure a lot of people are interested in and waiting for as the kind of the theme of this podcast. But before we do, if you're not already an Awesemo.com Plus member, this is a perfect time to do so. We've got a 20% off PGA Annual by using the promo code Schwab. It is valid through June 11th, so you're going to get 20% off an Awesemo Plus Golf Annual Pass. And basically, we're not going to be stopping golf all year. I mean, don't get me wrong, we don't have a tournament on Thanksgiving, But then we've got tournaments the week after Thanksgiving all the way to Christmas. We're only off for 1 week. We've got the Masters in November. We've got the U.S. Open in September. Got a lot going on, so a perfect time to pick up that annual pass. You're going to get 20% off by using the promo code Schwab. Okay, so now we want to learn about the Charles Schwab Challenge history and why these golfers might fit. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go player by player that have multiple top 10s in the last 5 years. So why would a specific golfer have more than one good finish at a specific course? Does that mean course history is real? And that is one of the most widely debated questions in the PGA DFS industry. Is course history real? Well, while course history may not be real, at least trying to look at the data of it, what is real is course fit. A golfer definitely has a skill set. Each golfer on the PGA Tour has a different skill set for the most part. And on that, within that skill set, specific courses can help them bring that out more than others. It's just pretty simple. So whether you fight that or not, whether you believe in course history or not, regardless of the point, in my opinion, because you should know that course fit and a specific golf course will fit different golfers differently. It's just how it's going to work. So the first guy we're going to talk about, and it's just because he leads in the amount of top 10s in the last 5 years at this golf course, is Jordan Spieth. Okay, you guys know, or most people know that are listening to this, that I love this guy, obviously. It stems, if you didn't catch the Fantasy Golf Pod interview that I did, you may not have heard that it's really because my wife liked him and then everybody else hated him, so it was just perfect. My wife likes him, everybody else hates him. Easy for me to slip in as kind of that anti or that villain, so to speak, role. So let's take a look at Jordan Spieth. Okay, 4 top 10s here in the last 5 years. A first, a second, an eighth last year. What makes this golf course so good for him? Number one, we know that he struggled off the tee. But when we look at the course profile, we find that not only is it really not helpful to have a long drive. The average drive here hit was 280 yards, which put it like 31st on tour, as I mentioned. But it's also one of the hardest fairways to hit at 50%. So you take those two things, which Spieth is far away or has been from the field in this department, especially hitting fairways and the length of that he's hitting. When you take those two things out and basically mitigate them, it's clear that the other parts of the game can shine. Now we take a look at his around the green game. Okay, well, we know that here at Colonial, at a par 70, scoring is not really going to get that low. I mean, yeah, sure, we saw Justin Rose get to minus 20 1 year, but the average winning score is somewhere between minus 12 and minus 15, except for that outlier year of Justin Rose. So now when it's hard to hit fairways, you don't need a long drive because it's not a long course. There's only 2 par 5s on the entire course. It now becomes a scrambling game. Jordan Spieth leads the entire field in starts over the last, I have in my database, so let me backtrack for just 2 seconds. The database that I hold goes back all the way about a year and a half ago. It starts at the Tournament of Champions, or I should say the Sony Open. I don't know why, not this past year, but the year before that. So it takes us, I know we had a 3-month layoff, but about a year and a half worth of data. In that years and a half worth of data, Jordan Spieth starts in which he gained at least 1 stroke with his short game was 11 out of 21 starts. So 11 out of 21 starts, he gained at least 1 stroke with his short game. Only Denny McCarthy, who had 27 starts, ended up with the exact same percentage of 52% of strokes gained with his short game, at least 1. So that goes to show Spieth. Why is he good here? Well, we know that you don't need to hit fairways, or it's very hard to. You know you don't need to hit it long, something that Spieth doesn't do, but you know you need to scramble. Spieth does it the best. Pretty clear as to why this is a great course fit for him. Moving on to Kevin Na. Kevin Na basically has the same thing here. He is ranked number 4 in terms of strokes gained short game. Number 6. Having done it 5 times in the 23 measured starts that I have. But in condition with that is that he doesn't really hit it long at all. In fact, he's one of the shortest hitters on tour. But he can also get very hot with his irons, having gained at least one stroke on his approaches 5 times out of those 23 starts. So when you match up a good approach game and you've got one of the best short games in the world, you can see why Kevin Na was a winner here last year and added in another top 10 a couple of years ago. So when Na's got that short game going, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with here. A guy that fits pretty similar mold is Kevin Kisner. Doesn't hit it long, does hit more fairways than most, and is also set as one of the best putters on tour. Problem with Kevin Kisner is he's been a little up and down. He does have a win here in another top 10, but also a missed cut in there. Kisner struggles with his around the green game a little bit, more so at least than these other guys. He's great when he gets on the green, but his off the green or around the green game is not that good. In fact, when we look at the specific strokes gained around the green stat, we find out that talk about Kevin's back-to-back. That's what can happen. We find that Kisner has only done it one time in 22 starts that I have measured, that he's gained at least one stroke around the green. So, I'm sorry, he hasn't done it yet. Apologize, I'm looking at the wrong thing. He hasn't even done it yet. So that's probably why you see if Kisner's not hitting the green, don't expect to see him make the weekend. Next guy that fits this exact same build or this exact same profile would be Brian Harman. Brian Harman, lefty, one of the best putters on tour, one of the shortest guys on tour, maybe by height and by driving distance, but does hit a lot of fairways. Harman hasn't missed a cut here in the last 5 years and has 2 top 10s. So now we've got the 4 guys that I just mentioned might be the best 4 putters on tour, or some of the best. A couple of other guys that have really performed well here. Maybe one that I don't really have a reason for is Danny Lee. Other than Danny Lee does not hit that many fairways on a weekly basis. So maybe the fact that these fairways are harder to hit, it brings the field down to him in that level, where now he can let the other parts of his game shine through. And then, of course, we got Webb Simpson. Webb Simpson, best putter on tour. Again, not great around the green, but he hits so many fairways and so many greens that you can expect to see him right up there this week. Then we got the last one that I'll mention is Ryan Palmer. And Ryan Palmer has quite the history here. 2 top 10s and 3 missed cuts in the past 5 years. Right? Maybe he came in 70th one of those missed cut years, but still 3 not good starts, 2 very good starts. When I try to look at why, Palmer has one of the best short games, especially for guys that hit it a little longer. He's also from Texas, and there's that narrative of play Palmer in Texas. So, when he's on, he could play well here, as we can see. When he's not on, it could be quite a roller coaster. Last 2 that have played well here, John Rahm, who we know can get very hot around the green and on the green, and struggles a little bit with his approaches, though. He had a 2nd and 5th here before a missed cut. So if Rahm's scrambling game is not on, you can expect to maybe see him pack his bags for RBC Heritage a little early. And Rory Sabatini is the other one. Sabatini is your consistent plotter and decent with his short game, so no surprise to see him come in a couple of top 10s. So now what I'm going to do, we're just at about 15 minutes here, which is perfect, is I'm going to go over a couple of guys that either have not played here or have not performed well here yet, or guys that have played well here but don't have any top 10s. So first guy I'm going to start with is Denny McCarthy. I mentioned Denny McCarthy when I was talking about Spieth, that he's the only other golfer to have at least 50% of his starts end up with at least 1 stroked gain on the short game. It ended up being, I think he had 27 starts, so maybe 14 of 27 he ended up with 1 more stroke gain. So Denny McCarthy, we know he's not long off the tee. You don't need to be here, so I feel like he should be a pretty good course fit. Sung J M. Sung J M is the other one that has just played so superbly with his short game. You know, obviously, to win, you need everything going on, but certainly Sung J M has really excelled and found himself in the upper echelon in terms of guys that can play well in the short game. So he is at 42% of his starts where he's gained at least one stroke on his short game. And the thing about him is that he has 33 measured starts in my database. So this isn't really, just a couple of events or something. No, this is 33, by far the most I have of anybody. And he was at 42%, so somewhere over 15 starts or pretty close to it, maybe 14, in which he's gained at least one stroke on the short game. Next one is Wyndham Clark. Wyndham Clark hits the ball a long way, but is terrible with his irons. However, here, if the winning score stays in that mid-teens, if his short game is on, which he's had 25 starts in my database, again coming in at 42% of those starts, gaining at least one stroke with his short game. If that game comes on, and he finds a couple of fairways, Wyndham Clark could be a good low-owned play. Next one, J.T. Poston. J.T. Poston and Andrew Putnam, I have both of them down here. Putnam is 2 for 2 in top 20s here. They're very similar. They're very good with their putter. Neither of them are great with their with their around the green game, but both are superb putters, top 10 on tour. Wouldn't be surprised to see them get it going this week, especially on a week where driving really doesn't matter all that much. They are two of the worst in that category. Very similar profiles to Spieth. Both of them, maybe not quite as good with their approach games as Jordan Spieth has been in the past, but very similar profiles. Lastly, got Mark Leishman. Man, when Mark Leishman putts and gets hot, he wins. One of the worst things about Leishman is that he's not good off the tee. He's not long. He's not overly accurate either. So, again, this course should fit up very well for him in that category. And if he's got his short game moving and grooving, we've already seen what he can do when that gets going this year. So look for Mark Leishman to pick up right where he left off in the good season that he was having. Last two, Russell Knox. So when I looked at strokes game, short game, I wanted to then see if I could find anybody that had a great short game and also found themselves gaining a lot of strokes on the approach. Because if you have good short game and you're good on the approach, you can almost believe you're going to have a chance to win this golf tournament. Russell Knox had 13 combined starts where he had at least one strokes gained short game and or one strokes gained on the approach. Nobody else had more than 13. Russell Knox was the leader in that category. So one would think he might be a pretty decent course fit here this week. And lastly, Brian Stewart. Brian Stewart, the guy that got it all started for me in this realm in PGA DFS. He hasn't missed a cut here since 2015, since the 5 years that I look at the data. And he also one of the better short games on tour, especially when he gets it going. I know when he won the Zurich Classic that got me started, that was all his short game. He putted lights out as you need to do to win a tournament. So definitely a good amount of names there, specifically on the course fit side. Now, the goal here is not to prove that course history is real. It's to prove that a course fit does exist. Does that mean that all of the guys that I just mentioned are guaranteed to play the weekend, let alone win the tournament? Heck no. They are definitely not guaranteed to do it. What I'm attempting to do is I'm trying to take out some of the noise. I'm trying to take out and maybe not limit my player pool, but focus my player pool on guys that I think have the ability to perform here better than they do somewhere else. Colonial gives us that opportunity. I'll do this each and every week. This one maybe a little longer. We're up to 23 minutes here, 24 minutes. So definitely put me on 1.5x or 1.25x as I do when I listen to podcasts. But again, we've got some great stuff going on. This is the first podcast for me of the day. Normally, Tuesdays, we'll have this podcast. Wednesdays will be the Reading the Grain podcast, which is a direct play off of my Against the Grain article, where I'm going to look at the 4 pricing sections that I do. I'm going to look at the highest owned plays. I'm going to look at the top pivots and break those all down. That one's probably going to be even shorter, maybe 10 to 15 minute podcast, but specifically on ownership. The most important part of DFS golf is ownership, finding that leverage, finding that guy. Yes, this course fit and form great, of course, but if they have super high ownership already, you're not going to be able to get too much leverage on them. So that's what the Against the Grain, Reading the Grain pod will do. And until then, make sure you check out all of our giveaways that we got going on. And of course, the Awesemo.com weekly pass that we're offering through our podcast giveaway. Mentioned that at the top of the show. All you got to do is give us a 5-star review, leave your Awesemo or Twitter handle in there. So until next time, guys, we've got a ton of content coming out today, Wednesday. And of course, join Ben and I, our first show back, the Live Before Lock. And until then, everybody, thanks for joining and cheers.